It's a tricky part of what we do, especially the age groups, that I typically work with, a lot of the high school athletes, middle school athletes, and then even collegiate athletes. Parents have a very significant role in an athlete's success team, and I've watched parents destroy their child's desire for their sport. Um, there have been a lot of bad examples that, I'm training and working with the parents as much as I am with the athlete, right? And even the session I had before this, I'm working on that parent-child communication, which is more of a therapeutic issue versus a sports performance issue, but it affects it.
Welcome to the Elev8 podcast. I am your host, Tyler Johnson. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. If you've listened to previous episodes and found some value in them, would love to know what that value is. Would love to hear your feedback. Comments, reviews always help. Find us on social media if you want to find anything else out as well. This week, on this episode, I have a great friend of mine. I met her through my work through the Positive Coaching Alliance. She is a high performance coach herself. She is a mix of competitive fire and gentle confrontation, as she is described. She is also the niece of legendary basketball coach Tex Winter. Kip has worked with Pepsi Bottling Company, Exos Training, and Baylor University recently as well along her journey. She is my friend and the founder and owner of the Brain Code Corp and Neurosport. Welcome to the Elev8 podcast, my friend Ann Kip Watson. Tell us a little bit about what you have going on with Brain Code and Brain Code Corp and what you do there.
Well, Brain Code Corp is more of my executive high performance coaching side of what I do. And then Neurosport is the sports psychology side of what I do. I use the same process of individual assessment because I'm assessing your intangibles, the things we can't see,
Right.
but the things that affect, the way we think, the way we feel, and what we do. So whether you're going down Brain Code as an executive or Neurosport as an athlete, it really is a way of assessing those intangible things using some neuroscience. I utilize the Myers-Briggs type indicator and then my own personal set of questions that I've, after 20 plus years of doing this, that I use to really evaluate somebody. And then we have a very clear roadmap of what your strengths and weaknesses are. And especially as an athlete, this is really important. You'll know exactly where those strengths and weaknesses are physically and mentally, given your brain code, given your goals, given like in a sport like football, it is position dependent. I know that a brain code that works on the offensive line, the best brain code for that, very different than the one that works as a DB or a linebacker, right? They require different mental strengths or mental muscles.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Totally. As a defensive back, I get that.
Yes, me too. Me too.
The best thing that taught me was, get over it.
Right. Well, yeah, when we screw up, everybody sees it, right?
Yeah.
When we miss, right, everybody knows.
Yeah. You'd see that when a wide receiver would become a DB and just that like shift a little bit sometimes, like a new role. But I know along your journey as an athlete, a parent to athletes, you've had some great coaches. Was there a coach along your journey that kind of elevated you more than others along that journey?
That's such a great question. And it's almost, golly, it's almost hard for me to answer that question because I would have to say overall, I did not have a coach that stood out to me as someone who was like, woo,
Yeah.
really made that like eternal mark on my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I definitely had some very negative ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really fueled me in a lot of ways to, I learned what not to do
Yeah.
as a coach, as a parent.
Yeah.
I do think I had not, they weren't necessarily my personal coaches, but like I grew up admiring my uncle Tex Winter, who was, I was around him as a kid when
Mm-hmm.
he coached at Northwestern, and then more as an adult when he was a coach at the Bulls and the Lakers. And so I got to be around him and ask him a lot of questions and watch him do his craft. But I wasn't necessarily, he wasn't necessarily my coach, but
Right.
he certainly was influential, I think, um, in terms of always looking at process and character and things like that versus actual results.
Sure. Different
And
model than you were used to seeing in your own world.
well, for sure. And then I think my dad, I have to say, my dad has been a huge influence on me. He played collegiate golf.
Okay.
And then well, he's retired now, but he was an ed psych professor at the Ohio State University.
All
And so a
right.
lot of the science that I use, I learned from him. And he used a lot with the men's and women's golf team at Ohio State.
Awesome. My
Very
mom,
mental sport.
my mom was a golfer at the University of Iowa. So,
There you go. Okay.
Big Ten
There
golf
you
people
go.
right there.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So, unlike many in your field, you kind of uniquely involve parents of younger athletes in some of your work. Can you talk a little bit about that and some of maybe the benefits you've seen and kind of the environment so many youth league administrators and high school coaches find themselves in with parents?
Um, gosh. It's a tricky part of what we do, especially the age groups, that I typically work with, a lot of the high school athletes, middle school athletes, and then even collegiate athletes. Parents have a very significant role in on an athlete's success team. And I've watched parents destroy their child's desire for their sport. Um, there have been a lot of bad examples that I'm training and working with the parents as much as I am with the athlete, right? And even the session I had before this, I'm working on that parent-child communication, which is more of a therapeutic issue
Sure.
versus a sports performance issue, but it affects it. It
Right.
affects it. And that's what I guess I'm thankful for. I'm both a licensed counselor and a sports psychology professional, so I don't have to farm that stuff out. If we find a therapeutic issue, we are going to deal with it.
Right.
And the parents play a key role, and if they're not executing that role well, it's going to be harder. Now, I think parents, we in Positive Coaching Alliance, we talk about parents. They are the backbone of support in teaching the life lessons, and that really is their role. A lot of times, even at the younger ages, it is more common to have the parent who's also the coach.
Yep. Yep.
And so we are navigating, those, how how you are as a coach to your kid and how you are as a parent to your kid, and those lines can be kind of blurry, and parents struggle with how to separate that. And luckily, I mean, I had 5 years of experience with that with my own kids. I coached my son's pee-wee football for 5 years, and
Awesome.
I coached their flag football teams where they were both on the same team, a co-ed team. And so, I think again, I've been able to speak to parents because I've been in that role at the same time, and they seem at least more willing to hear from me. But communication skills are really probably 100% of the time something we work on.
Right on. Um, Alongside with kind of the support of the parents, that is so important as kids kind of just grow through those teenage years, especially as athletes. What's maybe one of the things that sticks out to you the most that you see student athletes struggling with?
The number one issue, and this comes from surveying my clients, the
Yeah.
number one issue is confidence.
Confidence.
That's the reason why they come, is confidence. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding of what confidence is and what
Yeah.
it isn't.
Yeah.
Um,
Where it
you
comes
know, I think
from.
where it comes from, yeah, for sure. And so, you know, that's a big one. There's so many people that still believe confidence is a feeling. And I think we say that, like, I just don't feel confident. And I'm like, well, good, because it's not a feeling,
Yeah.
it's a belief you have. And so that's probably a big one. Obviously anxiety, and that's
Yeah.
really shot higher with what's happening around the
Yeah.
world. I had yesterday, I even had a web session with a swimmer, and she's really struggling with just the lack of her human social connection.
Yeah.
um, that's really increasing given what's going on. Lack of faith, understanding spirituality and its
Yeah.
connection
For
to
sure.
identity. A lot of my professional and elite athletes are really struggle with that one. What is my
Yeah.
identity away from being an athlete?
Yeah.
And so helping them with that, and then helping them also develop like your side hustle. What are you going to do once this ends?
Right.
And that being something we focus on, as well as the actual sports performance stuff. I think probably the other big one that I see is emotional immaturity.
Sure. Which I was pretty good at as a teenager.
You were.
Yeah, I think so. To be fair out there, yeah, that was one that took some time. And
Well, I think, and you can certainly speak to this from your experience, Ben. I think, and I don't know. I think some of this, you were talking about parents earlier, and I think some of this comes from the style of parenting that has happened in recent generations, and it could be this crisis really changes that. But we have coddled our kids more than we have equipped them,
no doubt.
so they don't know how to handle negative emotions when they happen. It's normal to feel anxiety.
Yeah.
There's not something wrong with you. You got
Yeah.
to learn how to manage it. And instead, we're like, oh, something's wrong with you. Let's go to the doctor,
Yeah.
right? Or let's get special treatment at school,
Yeah.
instead of really equipping them.
Yeah. I feel like maybe some of my own experience, some observed in others, is it's, instead of giving them the tools, you kind of try to get them off the job site and just like, I'm not a good fit, not fear,
Right?
instead of actually giving them tools and teaching them the work that the job site might require.
And that, I think, is that we even see that at the professional level, where we're no longer developing quarterbacks. We're expecting them to play as soon as they're drafted.
Yep.
That's been a shift in the last 10 to 15 years.
It's like come in and be the best.
Come in and contribute, rather than we're going to develop you and maybe a year, maybe 2 years, and then that's no longer the
Yeah.
expectation.
Yeah. And I think the extrinsic rewards that come with those roles, the mental impact that they have on things, which is very different from 1 year being a college quarterback to, having, the rewards are nice, the money's great, but people don't understand sometimes that dynamic that it plays on how you perform.
Yeah,
The
for
the
sure. Well, I think pressure. Have we been taught how to deal with pressure? That's one question I ask every single athlete that comes through my door. Tell me a time other than right now where you really faced a challenge or a struggle, and then tell me how you overcame it.
Yeah.
You'd be stunned at how many I get, like, um, uh, right? Our kids are not struggling. And then when they face something small, they don't even know how to handle that,
Yeah.
much less the pressure, yes, of being a college athlete and then turning professional.
Right.
And if you've just coasted along with success, that does create stress too. There's a lot of people, and I experienced this. I had incredible success the first year I competed as a gymnast. And then I'm voted into the Hall of Fame of my gym. And it's like, I didn't realize at 11 years old what kind of pressure that put on my psyche to maintain a certain level of success.
Yeah.
Hall of Fame success.
Right.
Well, how do you do that? That's usually a reward that you get at the end of your career, not at the beginning of your career.
Yeah.
You know?
So kind of navigating those things and you know, the tools and the anxiety and the confidence that you see, what's maybe one simple exercise or thing that you like to teach student athletes to kind of bring those down a little bit and help them step back into maybe a better version of who they are?
Well, I think one thing you got to get good at is just questioning yourself.
Yeah.
You may have those automatic thoughts, automatic negative thoughts, automatic judgments about yourself or other people. And you got to be like, okay, is that really true? Am I exaggerating? Is that a lie? And you really got to question it, especially if you're feeling kind of the top three negative feelings of anger, anxiety, or sadness. You really got to get good at questioning yourself because you're generating those feelings. It's
Right.
not the other person or the circumstances. You're generating those feelings. And so you really got to get good at questioning yourself. And then as you do that, I call it you got to BS yourself. And the BS stands for but statement. So if you're like, I suck, I can't do anything right, it's like, but. And then you got to speak the truth, right? I
Yeah.
refuse to give up. I trust my training, or, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So question yourself, use a but statement. It's very effective.
Yeah. I like the but statement. You got to throw some truth at the lies we tell ourselves, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, you're obviously a pro at this, work with pros at this, but why do you think, and also your experience of coaching other coaches, um, why do so many overlook maybe the simple benefits of breathing, visualization, developing these mental skills? Well, just like you said, so many contrastly easy see the anxiety, they see the pressure, they see the social media, but still don't want to look at these things as maybe possible tools.
Um, yeah, I think, even though it's gotten better, I think there is still kind of a stigma. Oh, that's kind of that psychobabble, hocus pocus type of stuff.
Woo woo.
Yeah, the woo-woo stuff or whatever the word is. Yeah. Um, and so, the bottom line is that's just a prideful statement. That's your
Yeah.
pride getting in the way of something that actually is very effective. Um, and that's fine. Yeah, again, I think it's getting better in terms of more people embracing that and understanding that. And I think also because, God, this is going to be maybe a controversial statement, but I think because there have been kind of several generations of mentally soft people
Sure.
that coaches are having to look at mental, emotional, spiritual tools to be able to deal with that
Sure.
and to draw out the best out of those athletes that tend to be more mentally soft. Again, I don't know. One silver lining from this crisis could be that we are going to get back to some tougher, more equipped, people.
Yeah, I think heard the quote a long time ago, but I can't remember where it came from. But I think it was an old philosopher that said, most of man's problems come from their inability to spend time by themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, even, the things that I've gone through in my life, like, yeah, that was like when I was very uncomfortable to be by myself in my own, I just, I wanted people, or just some of these things that I think so much can be learned when you're by yourself, but when you're uncomfortable, sometimes you got to be forced
Well,
into it.
you nailed it. You nailed it. And I think that's why a lot of coaches kind of struggle with it, because now I got to come face to face with my own stuff.
Right.
And that's hard. It's not comfortable to look at the stuff you got to change, work on, fix, weaknesses. And it takes work, takes self-discipline, and it does take being okay with yourself and looking at that stuff,
Yeah.
to be able to change it.
Yeah. I think so. Just like you said before, you got to kind of take a look at that stuff to maybe ask the right questions.
That's true. And I think, I always recommend that people have one or two people in their life that they're willing to go like 100% with.
Yeah.
But that last 5% that's in your closet, that at least those one or two people know it, can support you, hold you accountable, help you develop that part of your character that needs to change.
Yeah.
And that's really hard for people to be vulnerable. Brene Brown talks a lot about vulnerability, and her stuff on that's really good.
No doubt. So kind of vulnerability, going back to looking back when you were a 16-year-old. If you time traveled in the DeLorean, from
Yes.
your journey, your education, your experiences, what's one simple truth in life you would want to tell 16-year-old self to help you navigate the world?
Well, I think something I said earlier, actually, that confidence isn't a feeling.
Yeah.
I think if I had known that at 16, my gymnastics career would have looked and ended a lot different. I don't know that I would have been so worried about maintaining a certain level of performance success. I would just go out there and do it because it was fun, because I loved it, because I could be with my friends, and, just the challenge of just challenging myself and doing hard things. And I guess closely tied to that, again, we kind of talked about it before, just that my identity is bigger than the roles I have.
Yeah.
Not that I'm a gymnast, or that I'm a female football player, or that I'm a daughter, a mom, a wife. Those are roles I have, but it's not who I am.
Yeah. I think that's such a big one that I know I struggled with. I've seen other people as well. And I think great advice for everyone that might be around that age. You mentioned kind of the performance success, taking that bigger step back, like you kind of were getting to right there. How do you define success?
Well, for me, I wrote a personal mission statement in 1997, and I quote it to myself before I let my feet hit the ground every day, which is to impact, influence, and change lives. And whoever God puts in front of me. So I walk out of my home every day, or even within the walls of my home, and that's my intent every day. And sometimes it just means smiling at the Target checkout lady, I mean, or guy, or whoever is there, right? And calling them by name.
Yeah.
Rather than it just being this silent transaction where you don't ever make eye contact. But then obviously with my kids, it's very intentional. I got to show up my best with them as well as I do here, or with a client, or, wherever. So when I get to the end of my day, I do kind of evaluate, did I do that today?